Hey everybody, it's Lon.TV, and we're looking at the Lenovo Yoga Tab Pro 3 today. This is another Android device from Lenovo, and they let us borrow this for a couple days to check out. 10-inch display on this one, a 2560 by 1600 IPS display, so really nice viewing angles on it, and really in line with many of the other displays we've seen on other Android tablets from Lenovo. But what's really interesting about this are two things. One is the processor built in. This has got an Intel Cherry Trail processor, a Z8600, an Atom X5 chip, so it really performs very, very well up against other tablets out there in the marketplace. The other interesting thing is the projector that's built in here as well, so you can project what's on the screen onto a wall or projection screen, which might be useful if you're doing a lot of presentations and other things. We will take a look a little later in the video about how well the projector looks in two different kinds of light, so you can get a feel for whether or not this will work for what you might want to use it for. Like other Lenovo Yoga devices, it has this rather unique kickstand design here. So this kickstand, of course, can have the tablet stand upright like so. You can also put it down into a comfortable typing position. This also, by the way, doubles as its projector mode, so you can adjust the projector's angle just by moving this kickstand around here. You've got a lot of range of motion on it too. You can even hang it up from a wall if you wanted to do something like that. I do recommend when you are holding it to hold it on the cylinder side here on the left or the right, depending on which way you're looking at it right now, because most of the weight of this device is over here, so it just feels more comfortable to hold this way versus holding it like this. And of course the screen will orient itself appropriately to whichever angle you have it at, so keep that in mind as you're looking through this. It's got that Intel Cherry Trail processor, 2 gigabytes of RAM and 32 gigabytes of storage on board, a ton of battery life because of that heavy cylinder over here. This is where the battery is stored, so you do get a lot of battery life out of this. I got this about 5 or 6 days ago. I haven't plugged it in yet. It's been doing very well with just standby mode, because it was in standby for 2 or 3 days, not counting the time it took to get to me. So I think it's going to last a while in standby, and you also get about 18 hours or so of usage out of it, and I would believe that. So I think if you're picking up and using it for 10 or 15 minutes at a time, you probably get a couple of days out of this battery. It really does last quite a while on it. There isn't much on the hardware side here beyond that kickstand. You have the projector button here, which I'll show you in a few minutes. Your headset microphone adapter over on this side. On the other side, you've got the power button, a charging port. It uses the standard micro USB connector. You can also get an OTG cable. It's like a $2 cable, so if you want to plug in USB devices, you can do that into there. You also have a volume rocker here on that side. There are two cameras on the device. You've got a 5 megapixel selfie cam on the front here, and on the back you've got a 13 megapixel camera back there. The image quality isn't too bad. You don't have a stabilizer for video or anything like that, so it is going to jump around a little bit, but the still photo quality is decent. It's not great, but it's about where you'd see a lot of mid-range phones are at these days. I don't take a lot of pictures with my tablet, but if you have to take a picture, they should look okay, and you can check out an image sample there. It'll shoot at 30 frames per second at 1080, both on the front and the back, so you do have some decent options for video capture on the device. So now what we're going to do is take a look at some performance on this, and then we'll take a look and see how that projector works. So I'm running the 3D Mark Ice Storm benchmark right now. This is the 1080p version, and I'm seeing frame rates anywhere between 50 and 60 frames per second. I'll show you the score that I use to compare all of the devices I look at here on the channel in a second. But this gives you an idea of what it's capable of, and this is actually pretty good performance of a graphical demo that is really about where most of the Android games are at the moment. There are a few exceptions to that, games that really push hardware a lot harder, but generally this is the test that I like to run to see where things are at. I do run the 720p version of this test to get a real apples-to-apples score against all the devices I've been looking at over the last 2 years or so. And on that test, we get a score of 25,710, which puts it at a pretty high place on my overall scores. Now, I did want to run something a little bit more demanding on here too. This is the 3D Mark Slingshot test. I'll be doing more with this in the future as more devices come out that are capable of actually running it. So we're getting a score right now of about 7 to 10 frames per second. We're seeing much faster performance on the NVIDIA Shield K1, which is getting around 20 frames per second, almost at the same time in the demo here. So you can get a feel for, really the difference that having a dedicated NVIDIA GPU can make versus what Intel packs into their chipset there. So a real performance difference there on really super high-end stuff. But as we saw in the last test, this really does hold its own on many Android games that are currently out in the marketplace. So I think, in the future, this may not do as well as the NVIDIA tablet does, but for most of what what people run now, at least from a gaming perspective, this will certainly hold its own quite well. The one thing that didn't do as well, though, was emulation. So if I try to load up Virtua Tennis on my Dreamcast emulator here, you can see that it tries to start loading the emulator, and then it just dumps us out to the main screen here. And that's, I believe, primarily because of the fact that this is running with an Intel processor versus an ARM chip that a majority of Android devices have. I've seen this before, and so I think if you're running game emulators, you may run into some trouble getting them to run properly on this device. Now let's take a look at some of its Kodi performance, and then we're going to check out that projector. All right, I've got Kodi connected right now to my disk array down in the basement, so I'm going to just pull up maybe Independence Day here real quick, and we are running a Blu-ray MKV over wireless AC at 5 gigahertz. As you can see, it comes up immediately. This is a 1080p movie file, so really nice experience there. I'll just skip ahead a little bit in the film so you can see how it seeks, and as you can see here, everything spins right back up where we dropped off our slider there, and we can continue watching the film at a decent clip here, so really good performance there. Now, if I want to turn the projector on, all I have to do is hold down the button here on this side. So I'm just going to push that button real quick with my right thumb. And what will happen here is it'll give us a little message saying, you really want to turn the projector on? And I say yes. And now you can see we've got the projector up and running there. However, I have found that Kodi crashes whenever I do load up that projector. So I think there might be something going on there. Maybe there's a firmware update or something that will come out and fix that. But right now I couldn't really get the projector to stay on all that long with Kodi. Some of its other stuff it does seem to work better with. Now the projector does not have a manual focus on it. There's no plastic dial or something you can adjust to focus it. You have to use an on-screen control here to get that projector focused, which works okay, but it doesn't feel as precise to me as having a little plastic slider or something that would give me a more manual feel to this. So it does do a pretty good job, but again, it's just not very accurate. As you can see, the little circle doesn't always follow my finger as fast as I'm moving it. So it does take a little bit of getting used to try to get that projector into the right spot. Brightness, as you can see here, if you are in a darkened room with some natural light still coming in, I drew my blinds in this example, you can see it's not all that bright. So you definitely want to get a dark room without windows if you are going to be using this during the day to make a presentation or something like that. It will do, of course, much better in a dark room completely, as you can see in this shot here. So you'll definitely get much better color clarity and brightness when there is no competing light that's coming in after you. So it's probably not going to replace a projector, especially if you're going into an environment where you don't know what the lighting conditions are going to be. I would say you could probably get it to maybe a 10 or 12 foot screen in that darkened room, but not too much larger than that. The further you get back, the less clarity of an image you have, as well as that brightness really dissipates very quickly the further you get back from it. So I think you still need a regular projector for doing a mission critical kind of presentation, but if you know the environment you're going into, maybe a small conference room or something, and you can get it dark, I think this will do very well there. But if you're in an environment where you need something brighter, I would still use a projector and maybe a Chromecast to cast wirelessly from here to that projector to get the best possible image quality. But that is the Yoga Tab Pro 3. They packed a lot into this thing. Great battery life, nice display, decent performance with that Intel processor, and I think if you're looking for something premium, this might be worth considering, especially if you want to project something onto a wall from time to time and can get into a very dark room to do it. This is Lon.TV. Thanks for watching. This channel is brought to you by the generosity of my Patreon supporters. If you find the channel helpful, you too can contribute for as little as $1 a month. Visit Lon.TV/Patreon to learn more.